Hey y'all, so today we're going to be continuing on with The Great Hunt, which is the second book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. We're going to be covering chapters 10 through 14 today, so let's go. Okay, first off, I want to apologize for not having a video up last week. I got hit with a very serious sinus infection and it was terrible. I couldn't talk. My voice is still a little off and creaky sometimes, but it's good enough to film now. Just before, you couldn't even understand what I was trying to say, so I just waited until I got better, and I'm ready to go back with this week. Let's talk about chapter 10, The Hunt Begins. In this chapter, we are basically starting the hunt for the Horn. Matt, Rand, and Perrin are all leaving out with Ingtar and Huron. Huron is the sniffer that we're with. So during this time, we see that Rand has, his new clothes, which we talked about, and I think it's kind of interesting that Moraine chose to only give him heron-marked coats. I'm kind of curious to see where that's going to lead us in the future. I'm sure it's going to come into play for a very specific reason. You can tell, like I said, Rand is a little upset about it, which we talked about in a previous chapter, and I completely get that. Now, we do learn a little bit more, we hear a little bit more about Rand possibly being an Aielman, and Matt kind of sticks up for him a little bit here, even though Matt is still pretty upset with Rand, but at least he does kind of stand up for his friend, and that's really good to hear. And during this hunt, we come across two, maybe three little towns that are basically empty, and we're led to believe that the Trollocs that they're chasing after are taking these people for food, basically. And Perrin makes this comment about the town, the first one that they come across, smelling wrong, and that's kind of, I don't want to say it's the first hint that we've gotten that there's something more than just Perrin's eyes changing, because we knew that something more is going on with Perrin, but he has mentioned it, and it's kind of being implied that it's related to or similar to Huron's sniffing, but we as readers know that it's not, that it is something different. So I kind of felt that this was some foreshadowing that he's smelling the town, kind of like Huron is. In one of these empty houses, Rand has, I'm guessing, a type of flashback, or it's hard to call it a flashback when it's not really his point of view that he's flashing back to. He's seeing a previous point in time in this house. So he goes into this house and he sees that it's empty, the food is left there, flies are there, and then he'll blink and he sees this laughing, boisterous, very happy family. He blinks again, it's back to being the deserted town, blinks again, he sees the same family. I think it does about 3 times. It kind of caught me off guard because I felt like I was pretty tired when I was reading this chapter, and I almost thought that I was so tired that I started rereading the same paragraph over and over, and I had to actually stop and figure out that no, I'm not rereading the same thing over and over. It's just the author has basically rewrote the same thing over and over. So it kind of took me a second to figure out that I'm not falling asleep and dozing while I'm trying to read this chapter. So, but I'm really curious to see how, like I said, these glimpses in the past, if it's something that he's going to be able to kind of develop as he learns more about the One Power and kind of how he can control it. So it was definitely different, and it wasn't what I expected at this point. I don't really know what I expected out of Rand here in one of these villages or in this chapter, but him having a sense of what happened in the past wasn't one of them. Rand did have a pretty great quote in this chapter, which is, "Trying to stay alive is not the same as trying to be the hero." I like that quote because sometimes you feel like the main character, the hero of the story, is so busy worrying about being the hero that he doesn't realize he kind of needs to keep himself alive at the same time. So I really like that Rand has this a bit of insight so early in his character development, and I'm hoping that that will grow even more as he continues on in the series. I feel like that's a great place for him to already be growing from. It's very intelligent, a very smart way of thinking, and I feel like this is more foreshadowing of Rand's great character. I feel like he's going to become something so much bigger than what he was, and just an all-around good person, a very strong person, an important person, and I'm really excited to see where the series takes him. We finished up this chapter with a dead murderer, and that's pretty scary because obviously they're, you know, hard to kill. I'm really curious to see what exactly killed it, and obviously the characters are pretty scared because they know how serious this is. Chapter 11, Glimmers of the Pattern. So in this chapter we continue the hunt with Matt, Rand, and Perrin's point of view, and we learn that Moraine actually has set up Rand to become the second in command if something were to happen to Ingtar. This I find extremely weird because Rand doesn't have any experience in leading. He barely has life experience in general, let alone how to be in charge of a search party, a group of armed men. It's just, I'm not really sure what her purpose was in doing that, and if something really were to happen to Ingtar, what would she expect Rand to know how to do? With Rand's character, especially with him, you know, kind of being the hero and a steadfast person like we just talked about for the last chapter, I feel like he could step up to a leadership role. It's just he would have to lean so much on like Huron or one of the other members that has more experience, just life experience. He may have the character of a leader, but he has nothing to draw on, nothing to pull from, and know what to do next. So that's kind of concerning, and I don't really know, of course, what Moraine's plan is. I mean, at this point, it's clear that she has bigger plans that we'll learn when the time is right, but it is a little concerning. So Moraine also gives Rand the loose Theron banner, which was the previous dragon, and Matt comes across as a little jealous. I'm not quite sure how to read his reaction. It could just be a little bit of bitterness because he knows Rand is hiding something, and Rand comes out and tells Matt and Perrin that the Aes Sedai want to, or well, namely the Everland Seat and Moraine want to use him as a false dragon. He doesn't tell them that Moraine and the Everland Seat told him he was the dragon. He tells them that they want to use him as a false one. And I mean, we're getting close to the truth. And I mean, it actually does come out. Rand does admit that he can channel. So we finally get some truth going, even if it's a bit of a half-truth, which I'll take at this point. And Perrin is very calm, of course. Perrin is just so calm through all of this, and that's partly why Perrin is my favorite character. But I'm really glad to see that Rand finally kind of just said, yes, this is what's going on with me. And of course, Matt says that he's not the same anymore, and that's expected. I know we've talked about that before, where, you know, Matt's response is expected because of the prejudice that they all grew up with. It just kind of broke my heart that he comes out and just says, you're not the same anymore. And I don't know how much of that is part of the Dagger's fault, or if, you know, the Dagger is just kind of feeding on his own insecurities and fears. I think it's probably a little bit of both, but I really just hate that their friendship is taking such a strong negative veil to it, because they still care about each other, and I think it's clear that Matt still cares about Rand, even though he's now slightly afraid of him and doesn't know quite how to view Rand anymore. We also learned that Padan Fain is the one that killed the Fade in the previous chapter, and that's also not quite unexpected. I'm not surprised by this. I'm kind of curious to see what exactly Padan Fain's powers are going to end up being, because at first I thought he was just a dark friend, but I think clearly it's something a bit more than that. Chapter 12, Woven in the Pattern. So now we're back to the Everland Seat and Nynaeve and Egwene's point of view, and we're finally talking about the attempt on Rand and the Everland Seat's life. So right now we know that Rand kind of views it as an attempt on his life, but the Everland Seat, or most of the other people, believe that it was an attempt on the Everland Seat's life. And we're finally talking about it, but she does make it clear at this point that she's in a hurry. I mean, they have to leave. They can try to do an investigation if they want to, but so many people would want her dead, that she highly doubts they're going to be able to find it. So that makes me feel quite a bit better. I know I kind of left it off as being a little bewildered because it just felt like that nobody was talking about it and nobody cared that this random person, I won't say random, but someone tried to kill them. So I'm kind of glad that at least it's being mentioned. So that makes me feel a little better. I thought it was a weird choice, but I also understand her point of view that they're probably not going to catch them and they need to go. And I don't know if we learned this before, but I think we learned that red Ajahs don't have workers, and I found that interesting, but I can't remember if we already knew that or if it's just kind of mentioned in this chapter. Varen is an Aes Sedai that we've been introduced to, and I think I like her. I think I do. She offended Nynaeve whenever she called Nynaeve a wilder and kind of explained about women who can kind of begin controlling them, and Nynaeve is just so, she holds herself in high regard. She likes people to think highly of her, and I feel like she was offended by Varen calling her a wilder because that's just not how she views herself or wants other people to view her. We know she has some insecurity issues, but that's not how she believes other people should view her. And she definitely does not like to be told that she's done something wrong. I really relate to Nynaeve's anger issues whenever they're doing one of those exercises. She sets the blankets on fire because she said she just got angry and thought of flames. And I really relate to these anger issues that Nynaeve seems to have. I really do. Different Aes Sedai tend to come to the tent to try to help Nynaeve and Egwene learn, and while they're on their way to Tar Valon, and I find it hilarious that Nynaeve throws out Liandrin. So good, because we hate Liandrin, and I'll never forget it. We hate her. At some point, Moraine and Lan leave, and then Liandrin goes off after her because we hate Liandrin. And then Varen also leaves, and they're kind of upset because Varen leaves without her warder, which is pretty interesting. I'm kind of confused as to why she would leave her warder and what that means, because I thought they were supposed to be bonded, so there has to be a specific reason why she left the warder. But I feel like we need to learn a bit more about this relationship and what warders do for the Aes Sedai before we might fully understand what Varen is doing without him. Egwene also has a dream where Rand is in trouble and that he's sleeping and that he disappears, and she tells another Aes Sedai, Anaya, and Anaya calls her a dreamer, or says that she might be a dreamer, and I think that's going to be interesting. We're kind of seeing some of Egwene's powers blossoming a little bit. I feel like maybe this could have been brought on after she was practicing some of her, touching the one power at night in the tent, and I am interested to see where this goes. Is she going to turn out to be a dreamer? What that means? And obviously I think something has probably happened to Rand, or is going to, because of this dream that she's had. I have a feeling that it's going to turn out to be something that she may end up relying on in the future. Chapter 13, From Stone to Stone. So in this chapter, we're back to Rand's point of view, and lo and behold, he has disappeared in his sleep. He and Loyal and Huron are all, I don't know what to call it, but they are no longer with the group that they were with when they went to sleep, and they are now in front of this giant stone that is obviously magical, and Loyal knows something about them. Obviously they're from way before the time of the Aes Sedai, and it kind of reminds me, I get the feeling of it's almost like a fast travel, but to another, I don't know if it's a different time that we're in now, or if it's just a different plane of existence. I have no idea where we are. They're in the same physical location, but nobody else is there with them. And I feel like, I'm glad Loyal is with Rand, although I feel like Loyal's character's main purpose is to just be a walking encyclopedia for Rand and the group, and of course therefore us, the readers. I don't know how much I like that, but at the same time we have to be able to learn things about the world. I don't know how interesting the books would be if Rand and Huron just woke up and they had no idea what happened. They have no idea what the stone is for or anything. I don't really know if we could feasibly get through a book with just not knowing anything and not having a character like Loyal around to try to sort of explain things without fully info dumping, because we still don't know what they are. We just have a small idea. So I'm okay with it. I don't mind this plot device of using a character to do that. So Rand tries to basically bring them back to wherever they were before, and Robert Jordan is describing Rand trying to reach out to the One Power, and I really like this description. It's very interesting. It feels very different than how it was being described with Egwene and Nynaeve. He talks about this filmy, oily, dirty substance lingering on him and affecting his mind without even touching the One Power. You can tell that this is the tainted part of the magic and where the madness is going to be coming from. Huron can still sort of smell where the Trollocs have gone, even though he says that it smells faint but not old. So I feel like they're just kind of in another maybe demi-plane, another dimension, something like that. And they decide, because they don't know how to use the stone, they're going to try to travel and follow the Trollocs south and then maybe find another stone. Here's what bothers me about that. Loyal makes a comment about how he's never heard of anyone finding these stones before. So I'm not sure why we are suddenly supposed to expect to find another one if it's supposed to be pretty rare. And I also feel like leaving the stone is kind of a mistake. I don't know what they would do at this point with the stone. They don't know how to use it. But I feel like I would be afraid to leave the point of entry into this new place that you're in. I would be afraid to leave it, but I'm not Rand. So the other thing that I find interesting is I'm sort of reminded of the ways from the Eye of the World with these stones, because we had the archways, and it's almost like another plane of existence that you go into the ways, and it's a shortcut to another place. And I kind of wonder if these stones are the same thing, but maybe instead of to like real world travel, it's more of to another plane or to another point in time. That's kind of what it's reminding me of, but we'll see when we learn a little bit more. Chapter 14, Wolf Brother. So before I even started this chapter, I knew it was going to be a Perrin chapter. Naturally, it's called Wolf Brother, and I was so excited because Perrin is my favorite character. And so now we're seeing where Rand and Huron and Loyal have left Mat and Perrin and Ingtar and the rest of them. So I do find it interesting that Mat is automatically like, maybe he ran away, and that's kind of shows how bitter he is with Rand. But then he even admits to himself that he doesn't think Rand would leave him and leave and like abandon the chase for the dagger, because he knows that Rand knows the dagger is extremely important to Mat, and deep down, even through his anger, he still believes that Rand cares enough about him that Rand would want to find the dagger for Mat first. And so I feel like that's a really good inclination of how their friendship still has this very solid foundation and trust built into it, even though some of the more recent situations have caused them some grief with each other. So I really liked that touch. So because the sniffer is gone, aka with Rand, Perrin uses his ability to contact the wolves and try to see where the Trollocs may have gone. He learns that the wolves call him Young Bull, and he gets like these different images of himself, being very strong and powerful and attacking these white cloaks very efficiently, and that's why they came up with the name Young Bull. And I love that because it's such a different picture than what Perrin has of himself. He doesn't view himself that way at all, and I kind of like that the wolves can see Perrin for who he really is. So Perrin breaks down and tells Ingtar in confidence that he can talk to wolves, and Ingtar is reminded of Elias Manchurin and realizes that Perrin also knows Elias, and I like that Ingtar knows of Elias, and that gives Perrin some credibility, and I enjoy that. So I'm really glad that that was a thing, and I'm glad that Ingtar was going to keep Perrin's secret. That's very important, and I feel like that speaks a lot to Ingtar as well, and how good of a leader he is, because he recognizes they still have to move on and find this horn. That is the utmost importance, but he also recognizes that it's probably better for Perrin if he keeps this a secret. So instead of saying exactly what Perrin's ability is. He just says that Perrin has an ability like Huron did to smell violence. Matt immediately makes a comment about how he's the only sane one left because Egwene and Nynaeve have gone off to be Aes Sedai, how Rand is now obviously what he is, and so he's the only sane one left. And of course, Matt is getting on my nerves, but Matt is precious, and I will stick by that until he's fixed. I know Matt is precious, and I know that he's having issues, so I'm giving him free reign to be an asshole. And I just worry that he's going to end up isolating himself and kind of pushing away everyone. He's going to push them too far to where it's going to be really hard for the other characters and other people in general to forgive him. So that's what I worry about, but I understand why this is happening, and I just hope Matt can get the help he needs soon. So they continue the hunt for the horn using Perrin's abilities, and we didn't really get that far. I think there's supposed to be another town up ahead. I think they've sent someone to scout it, and we also learn at that point that Moraine is actually the one that sent Varen away, because Varen shows up here with Matt and Perrin looking for Rand. It's almost made out to be like Varen is there to help find the horn, but Matt sees through that, and he can tell that Varen is really there for Rand. And I really like that Matt can see through the bullshit. So that's at least a good thing that Matt has done. Alright, I hope you don't mind that this video was a little bit longer this week, just hopefully to kind of make up for last week, but this was chapters 10 through 14 of The Great Hunt. So hopefully on the mend, I'm feeling much better, and I will see you all next week with the next section of the book. Thanks. Y'all take care. Bye.